Howdy guys, hope you're doing well. Hope you got a good Halloween weekend. We're gonna transition back to equations, so the equal signs are gonna be back in. We're gonna take all of last week's stuff with distributive property and like terms and start to work them together. Like I said before, everything builds, so make sure you're staying on top of things. We're gonna be shifting back to IXL, and so what I've done here is I've taken some problems from two sections of IXL to kind of walk you through the two big ideas that we've got. So we'll go ahead and share a screen over here. And let's make that a little bit bigger. There we go. So what we've got here is we've got solving equations with combining like terms, and we've got solving equations with distributive property. Our goal is still the same, which is to get x alone. Now, if we're going to solve equations with combining like terms, that's going to be examples 1 and 2. Now, with example 1, we've got 10x and negative x. Now, if we recall from last week, I'm going to put a 1 in front of that x. And so when I combine like terms, we're going to be combining anything that's on the same side of the equals. You can't do anything across this barrier when you're combining. So if I just take 10x and I subtract 1x, just like last week, 10x minus 1x is 9x. We're going to bring the equal sign straight down, and we're going to bring the 9 straight down. Now, we've got a one-step equation at this point. If my goal is to get x alone, I have to get rid of the 9 that's touching it. We'll recall that anytime a number is touching a variable, that means multiply. And the opposite of multiply will be division. So I divide both sides by 9. 9 goes into 9 one time. And I've solved the equation for the letter x. So again, we're just going to combine like terms and then solve for x. We're taking two IDs and we're mixing them together. Now, example 2 I took from IXL, and the reason why I put this one on here is because you've got negative negatives. We haven't addressed negative negatives since we had integers at the beginning of the year. I'm going to put my barrier here for the equal sign, and you're going to see that I have 4 different like terms. Now, before I combine those like terms, I have to take the double negatives. And if you remember, double negatives turn into a positive. So 2 negatives make a positive. 2 negatives make a positive. And we now have to combine all of those like terms. Now, you can combine straight left to right. You can group things up. And you can rearrange as long as you keep the signs in front. I'm going to group things up because I see 2 terms here that are negative. And if I have a negative 20 and a negative 5, those are same signs. So I'm going to put those together and get negative 25x. And then here I'm going to take the positive 10 and the positive 17, and I'm going to put those together and get positive 27x. So instead of doing everything on one step, I'm going to show a little bit of work in between because it helps me keep track of my like terms. I can still combine these because they both have an x. So if I take negative 25 and positive 27, that's going to leave me with 2x. I'm going to bring the equal sign down, and I'm going to bring down the negative 16. And in order to get the x alone, I need to get rid of the 2 that's touching it. So go back to one-step equations. When it's touching, that's multiply. And the opposite of multiplication is to divide both sides by 2. So x equals negative 8. So 2 examples of solving equations with combining like terms. Well, now let's go ahead and introduce distributive property into that problem. So I'm going to go to example 3. And example 3 has a negative sign in front of the parentheses, and I have to get rid of the parentheses using distributive property. Well, recall from previous lessons that if there is no number there, we're going to put a 1. And I'm then going to distribute the negative 1 to the x and to the negative 2. So using our distributive property, negative 1 times x is negative 1x. Negative 1 times negative 2 is positive 2. And then I'm going to bring down the equals and I'm going to bring down the negative 16. Get rid of the parentheses, and now I have a two-step equation. So two-step equations we did about 2 weeks ago. Step one for a two-step equation is undo the addition or subtraction. So I'm going to undo the +2 with a -2. Whatever I do to one side of the equals, I'm going to do to the other. A -16 and a -2 makes -18. Bring down the equals. Bring down the -1x. The -1 is touching the x, so that means divide, because that's the opposite of multiplication. And when I divide, a -18 divided by a -1 means that x equals 18. So we started with distribution. We distributed the -1. We multiplied it when we sent it in. And then I had a two-step equation that I solved to get x alone. And the final example from IXL is going to be example 4. We have distributive property and combining like terms. And we have some slightly larger numbers, so you'll need to calculate those out. Maybe use a calculator to help you. But step one is get rid of parentheses. So I'm going to distribute the 6 into the x and the -87. Well, 6 times x is 6x. 6 times -87. We're going to get -522. I'm going to bring down the +10, bring down the equals, bring down the 40. After I distribute, I will combine like terms. Now remember, you cannot combine anything across the equal sign. So the only two like terms I can combine are the -522 and the +10, because they're on the same side of the equals and they're both just plain old numbers. So 6x, -522 and +10 makes -512. Bring down the equals, bring down the 40. And now I have a two-step equation. So I'm going to add 512 to both sides. And 6x equals 452. Excuse me, 552. I was looking at that 4 up there. And then I'm going to divide out the 6. And when I do that, x is going to equal 552 divided by 6. X is going to equal 92. So we started off with two examples where we combined like terms and then got x alone. And then we had two examples where we had to do distributive property, and then we get x alone. So we're taking our solving equation skills and we're adding just a little bit from what we have now covered most recent. What I'd like you to do right now is go ahead and pause this video and try these two problems on your own. One has distributive property and the other has combining like terms. So go ahead and pause and then come back and see them worked out. Well, now that you guys have hopefully worked out both of these examples, let's see how you did. The first problem here wants me to distribute because I have to get rid of parentheses. So when I distribute the 3, it's going to be 3x plus 15. I'm going to bring down the -8 and bring down the 16. 15 and -8 are on the same side of the equals, so they can combine. So 3x, a +15 and a -8. It's going to make a +7. Bring down the equals, bring down the 16. It is now a two-step equation, so I'm going to undo the +7 with a -7. 3x equals 9. Then undo the multiplication with division. And when I get this particular problem here, x equals 3. 9 divided by 3 gives me 3. So hopefully you did well on that one. If not, go back and revisit that problem, pause it again, and solve it now that you've watched it worked out. And let's take a look at our second example for the try it here. There are no parentheses, so I'm going to go straight to combining like terms. A 3x and a 7x, a 3x and a 4x makes 7x. Bring down the plus 5, bring down the equals, bring down the 19. I now have a two-step equation, so I'm going to subtract 5 to both sides. 7x equals 19 minus 5 is 14. Divide by 7, and x equals 2. I would be careful. Obviously, I squeezed into the bottom of the paper here. Just be careful doing that. You don't want to run out of space because that may cause you to make some careless mistakes. So that's a brief lesson on solving equations with combining like terms, solving equations with distributive property. We're going to continue to build on these equations and things are going to get more and more complex. So please make sure you're staying on top of things because we are going to keep building day by day. Have a great day. And if you've got any questions, just reach out to me.